So the first question, and thanks to the person whose name begins with M, I'm asked, your online videos mention world events showing up repeatedly in the readings of individuals, and not to read tarot for ourselves as shuffling puts our own energy into the deck, resulting in a lack of objectivity. Part 2 of this, is an individual reader able to objectively shuffle and ask tarot about world events? Or does an individual still lack the objectivity to do this, even if not asking for themselves specifically? 3, or does tarot determine every individual's life experience and interpretation of life will be different? So in effect, we are still unknowingly actually asking for ourselves, being a part of the whole. So no, I cannot ask objectively about world events, ? Or can I? For example, questions regarding current very publicized health issues, isolation and areas of global conflict, and inquiries as to backstories and potential outcomes. Does tarot respond to world events questions asked by an individual or disregard them? Will I keep going? No, I won't. I'll just stop there. Okay, so first of all, we're living in an era where we are being bombarded with information on social media about seeming world events. I don't care. You don't read for yourself. You can't read for yourself. You've got no objectivity when you try to read for yourself, no matter which way you go. You're going to misinterpret something. I had a client 2 weeks ago, and in the midst of their reading, which was a Skype session with someone in America, up came not the moon card and the tower and the Knight of Swords, separate in a triplet in the map that's known as Dead Reckoning. And that was a storm, a really fast-moving 120-kilometre-an-hour storm. That's the Knight of Swords in that particular instance, representing speed. Okay. Did it have anything to do with the person? No. Did it have to do with the hurricane currently bearing down on New Orleans that also experienced Hurricane Katrina a few years ago? Yes. Did it have to do with the earthquake and the consequent massive floods that are affecting Haiti and that are affecting Japan? Yes. Is this happening elsewhere in the world? If you're going to hear about it, if you're going to be aware of these dynamic Earth events, then yes, you're going to hear about it. Just fix that up so that it doesn't go dark. But let me just raise up this lot for you. I just pulled out this succession of specific cards to give you some examples, and we'll just go over them one at a time without necessarily putting them into any kind of fixed modality of interpretation. So the Page of Wands, I mean, apart from a lot of things that it can represent, is also information. It is the spoken and the written word. It is the essential spoken and the written word. It sort of represents that. It can be the concept of this, the kernel of information, communication, without having bust the seed open yet. So that's the Page of Wands in this instance. Can it mean other things? Of course it can, and we'll get onto that actually in the classes. But right now, let's just take into account that this Page of Wands is information, communication. Then we got the Fool card. And you've got no idea what's coming with the Fool card. You've got no idea what this represents. This is typical of walking the streets in Seminyak in Bali, where the pavements are completely irregular, and the possibility of dropping off. Breaking an ankle is like a good one. This will also turn up in the Stargate map and have a very different kind of meaning depending on where it actually falls. It also can represent an edge dweller, which everybody who's a little bit on the mystical side is an edge dweller. But it also represents a kind of what the fuck. So if I put that with the Page of Wands, I've got information, but I'm also like, what the fuck? Okay, so here with the Five of Wands is where you got like a table full of paperwork, a table full of books, a whole sequence of bibliographies, and you're attempting to do some research. You're burrowing down into the very, very depths, for example, of Holy Blood, Holy Grail, in search of the bloodlines of the Magdalene, messianic legacies, so on and so forth. But what you've got here is this concept with the Five of Wands of several people talking at once, of crossed wires, of using words or sticks in this instance as a form of battle. Okay, so it makes no sense. Can mean other things. We'll get to that, but it makes no sense. So let's put these three together. See, you see how we're starting to form a pattern? Like there's the information. I got no fucking idea what that means. So here's all the possible representations of what that Page of Wands could mean. Then you come up with your lovely Nine of Wands, and your Nine of Wands added to this goes, fuck me, teach me something I don't already know. Let me hear something I don't already know. So it's very much in its own right a card of the jaded, those who've heard it all before, and those who are attempting to make sense of something that in its own way really is verbally senseless or communicatory senseless. This is someone who says, I can't speak pigeon. How am I supposed to know what a pigeon wants? I can't speak wolf. I can't speak the language of the land. I can't speak the language of the First Nation people. What do I know? But who's listening? Nobody's listening. That's the point of this. So then we can add a 10 of wands to that, which is the research, where you gather your information, you put the energy into exploring what that actually means. You have a bundle. Yeah, look at it literally. Come on, look at it literally. A bundle of stuff, a bundle of communication. Have you got the answer? No. But add the Chariot card to that, which is the Chariot card is when you have reached a certain milestone. The Chariot card is a form of victory, but it's the firefighter who's climbed 15 floors in full gear and managed to make it without dying of dehydration because they're earning money for the firefighter's new truck. So they've reached the 15th floor, but they've still got to get to the 30th floor. My goodness, though, you've got to give them credit for having got to the 15th floor. And so it is with all your learning. Learning to speak a language that is not synonymous with what you maybe have learned in school or what you have learned in your exploration even of tarot. Learning a language is what you're doing here with all this. Now, how are you supposed to ever have an objectivity with anything that you're looking at on the table? If, for example, you're looking at the tarot for yourself, you've chucked out a dead reckoning spread for yourself, and there's the Tower, and there's the Moon card, and there's a car crash, for example, and there's ambulances, and there's death. The death card turns up, and your partner is a person of swords, and a person of swords, which would be the king, queen, or page, is on the table. Now, what are you going to do? How are you going to think? You think you're going to be able to be unscared? You think you're going to be able to look at those cards and go, that's not my partner, that's some complete stranger. It's just there and I'm just looking at it and it doesn't mean anything to me. You can't do it. You won't be able to do it. You will make assumptions, and assumptions are molengro, so we'll get onto that. Now, what we used to, ta-da! What we're used to is the kind of technological ideology that seeks answers from authorities. But who gave the authority to the authorities, you may wonder. Now, that Three of Pentacles, of course, is discussions and interviews with people who supposedly are in the know. If you were attempting to talk some people into giving you a job or an apprenticeship, you would approach those two people standing up on the ground. Taking the high ground of standing on that step means that you've done your research and you're good at what you know, you're good at what you've presented so far. You may be after a government grant, you may be after funding after that storm hits, all kinds of things. But you see, this authority figure, this is something else. In many instances, when you're reading tarot, you'll see this come about. You'll see this turn up as a government, a hospital, or an educational body. You'll definitely see it turning up as a patrilineal lineage. You'll definitely see it turning up for a country that, for example, has a law that imprisons women for speaking out. That would be everybody here, yes. But ask yourself, who set this up in the first place? Do we have to go into history to find that information? Yes. Is the only available history that we have as a generalized Anglo-European people the kind of history that's written up by the conquerors? Yes. So therefore, do we then need to explore the languages or the information or the history that is maintained by cultures that are non-literate? Absolutely. Will we get a different perspective by doing so? Absolutely. So you're used to generalization. I do apologize. We are used to theoretically gaining all of our information from authority bodies when in actual fact there's something else we need to talk about. There's some other way of communication. There is a way of knowing, and I'm going to get to that. Because even here with the Hermit card, you're given a word, hermit, and you're given an image of an old person with a stick in their hand and a little lamp crossing the cold mountains, when in actuality that word, the Hermit card in the middle of the medieval period, was called the spy, and the spy is S-P-A-E, which is someone who is a seer. Now we'll get on to that, because if you look at this card and you think Jackie Chan, much more appropriate. If you look at this card and you think Be Water, Bruce Lee, much more appropriate. So on the, is there any type of tarot reading questioning which can be asked simply for practice sake only? I don't care. What am I, your master? No, I don't care. I'm not your jailer and I'm not your mother. And I wouldn't tell you if I was your mother anyway, because I think that that becomes to the individual. You can practice, you can do whatever you like. None of this has got the kind of rules in behavior that you're maybe going to get from what you think of as traditional schooling. This is not that. This is like Druid lore. We gather in the hedgerows, we gather in the secret places, and I pass on the knowledge that I've gained over decades. That's it. What you do with it is entirely up to you. If you end up being this major celeb tarot reader, well, good on you. If it gets you a house, yeah, but you've got to live with the consequences of that. And so does everybody around you. And ultimately, so do I. Because on a final note, before I complete this grouping, on a final note where that's concerned, we are looked at, those of us who are involved in the mystical I won't use the word occult because the word occult means hidden. And this is not hidden. This is available for information, but there's a way of looking at it. This is important. A way of being with this information that requires us to change. Now, how we are viewed by those people who have been brought up in Abrahamic Christianity, for example, Abrahamic law, how we are viewed by those people are suspect, because who predicts the future? What kind of person can predict a year, 2 year, 2 years, 3 years ahead, 5, 10, 15, 20 years ahead, events that give you specific information? Who can do that? Okay. And now we get to the pointy end of this entire situation. It's not a matter of who, it's a matter of us. We have been inculcated into the consciousness that says we are separate and unique and important in the scheme of Earth's destiny. And we're just another fucking species. This is important. But within that is a kind of an ecological and ecodiverse and species diversity that becomes very important to this, so that I will talk of a dog person, a horse person, a tree person, a cockroach person who's missing from my house, and I'm going, where are the cockroaches in my house? It's 100 years old. There should be cockroaches. There's a problem here. There should be ants. It's a problem. So in the book Brave, which comes out on the 1st of September, one of the pieces I'm going to read to you, so do excuse me just staring at a screen for a minute, and this will explain how we can break free of this limitation of the word. And I've got so much more to say about this, but I don't want to bore you. So in the meantime, what I'm going to do is to sort of read this for you. This is called Fairy in the Alley. Now, Fairy, quickly, very quickly, what just came to your mind? What came into your imagination? What did you see? That's important, because these images are going to very much crack open how you read cards. It's going to work with all these. It's going to be your gateway, your doorway to the freedom of having information and stories and law come your way, rather than you imposing yourself onto tarot and onto a spread or a map. This is the difference. You are not going to impose yourself onto these 78 images that represent nothing on their own until they're put into sequence. Where that sequence comes from is the whole earth. There is no distinction. What is the expression? The expression, the beautiful expression, divided for love's sake on the chance of union. I'll just repeat that. Divided for love's sake on the chance of union. That's how we can love another person. That's how we can lose our breath to the moment of awe, walking through a pine forest, for example, being at the base of a fjord, winding our way through the Cairngorms, walking softly through the Kimberleys. That awe is a sense of freedom that now we realize that we're belonging. Okay, so this piece is called Fairy in the Alley, and the word fairy has got nothing to do with a painted winged creature. We'll get to that at another time. First bit is a quote from George Monbiot's book, Feral. He writes, Sitka spruce. The seed must have blown in from the great plantation across the mountains. They were, as far as I could tell, the only trees on the reserve. They were, as far as I could tell, the only trees on the reserve, except for those clinging to the inaccessible slopes of the ravine. The White Plague, or so I thought at the time, had destroyed the rest. Before the Roman infantry invade mountains and fertile valleys and shoreline habitats, I am here. I am Bridjant, and the human Bridjant children are sometimes called Karvet, the people of the deer. Current positioning on a nautical map is latitude 54 degrees 29, 59.99 north, longitude -3 degrees 14, 60.00 west. I am Cumbria, and although this is difficult to define, I will say that I am cousin to rivers, lochs, and aft shot aft the Western Isles. I am the waters of what is called the Solway Firth, just north of Carlisle, that brings in the stories of smelt, flap-footed seals, basking sharks, blue mussels and curlew. Mona, Inishmon, is known in the modern shallow know little profess much dialogue as Anglesey, or perhaps the Isle of Man that Tacitus, buddy of the bitter politician Claudius, writes of as a land of druids. I am Standing Stones, and the first forests of oak and rowan, pine, blackwood, birch, spruce, and grave dappling yew. And let's not forget the wee islands, named by the Norse, of Walney, Faldray, Roa, and Fulna, all Lamerick safe for anchorage amidst the terror of the Bameslave from the west on bobbing insanity of coracle and curra. Have I been fought over? Yes. Am I extant? These grandchildren are living also, so how can I not be present wherever governments, traders, invaders, and deeply entrenched trauma have driven us? So I am Keldon Fen, reed singing marshland, and I am home to teal and the auburn grandeur of the little egret, oyster catchers, barnacle geese, the eerie, sheely language, weirloo, of a night calling curlew, hence I'm bogs and territories of peat, primordial, drowned plant people cousins, once vast beyond comprehension, gracing earth from some glacial estimate of 12,000 years deep, the end of a mythic and legendary ice age or two, or three, or whatever. I am Bari riverstone carved veins, brooks, burns coursing from Solway Firth in the west to the Firth of Forth here, choking a bit on the abandoned shopping trolleys and condoms, little orange-tipped syringes, cigarette butts, discard slushy cups, and occasionally but regularly the body parts of some bloated, drug-fucked, forgotten, abandoned, mutilated, murdered dead. Dunedin, which is Edinburgh, that grand fortress made of grandfather's stone, now leaning towards me, calling, take me now, on this epic excursion from the Irish Sea to the shock and whale-mother depths that human call Mere Lachlan, far to the north where the Finnick swim. That doesn't turn up in the tarot cards as being an example of what the weather's going to be like, or who's going to get sort of screwed over and knocked off in their home, or who's going to sort of like end up getting a job with an insurance company. That's got to do with the understanding that we are whole Earth. Earth is us within each living body, and that's from jellyfish to whale, we're somewhere in there, is a vast, incalculable atmosphere, biosphere, and ecosphere that incorporates everything that ever was and everything that ever will be, let alone everything that ever is. So that when I sit opposite you and I read your cards, I've got this, I've got this, So I do this, and I end up with this. And this is a smaller example of the story I just read to you, but it will be the story of the person sitting with you. There is no confusion over this. There's none. I haven't gone to any authority body or any old bloody news that came out of the Middle Ages or the church monks sitting there giving themselves all kinds of heart attacks, wondering whether they should be going mea culpa, mea maxima culpa, and swashing themselves with blackwood branches of briar and thorn. And their masters, their captors in castles built by Normans, their captors being nuns and monks and priests and nobility, from one region of takeover to the other, keeping close to them the ability to know where we can get the gold or where we can get the oil or whose territory can we steal. When Earth says, fuck you, I'm going to rain on your parade, Earth will do so, because Earth communicates with us because we are Earth. Is that too weird to get hold of? It takes a consciousness of saying, I don't want to grow up, I want to grow down. I don't want to be seen out there, I want to explore in here. I want to know that I really am suns and stars and space beyond measure, that within every atom of our being, each one of us, no matter what our species, is an entire solar system. Beyond a solar system, a universe. Does that answer the question? Does it mean you can't read your own cards? Who said can't?